comes a moment in your life when you realize the enemy doesn't fight you for where you are, he fights you for where you're going. And you can always tell the magnitude of the promise by the size of the pressure. That's why the battle's been so intense. That's why you felt stretched in places you didn't even know have flexibility, because the assignment on your life was never small, it was never ordinary. And the weight you're carrying is not punishment, it's preparation. You see, sometimes God lets the weight stay, not to crush you, but to build you. Because if you only lived in easy, you would never know what you were made of. If you only walked through open doors, you would never develop the muscles to kick down the ones that were shut in your face. That pressure that keeps you up at night is building something sacred in you. It's growing a grit that only comes when glory is hidden in pain. There are some seasons when life will make you question everything, your strength, your calling, your worth. But I came to tell you, if you're still breathing, if you're still standing, bruised maybe, but still standing, then you've got what it takes to push through. You may be tired, you may be weary, but the oil on your life demands endurance. You can't quit now. You've come too far. You've cried too many tears. You've survived too much to stop here. The push isn't always pretty. It's not always polished. Sometimes the push is messy. Sometimes the push looks like dragging yourself out of bed when your heart is shattered. Sometimes the push is praising God with trembling lips. Sometimes the push is showing up when all you really want to do is hide. But don't despise the push, because the push proves the power inside of you. We love the mountaintop, but the oil is cultivated in the valley. And I know the valley is lonely. I know the valley is dark. But the valley is where your vision gets clarity. The valley is where you learn to hear God in whispers. The valley is where God teaches you that even in the silence, He's still speaking. He's still weaving purpose through every broken piece of your journey. You see, you don't need a crowd to validate your calling. Some of the most powerful breakthroughs happen in private, in the closet where no one's watching, in the midnight hour when tears are the only language you know how to speak. That's where heaven leans in close. That's where strength is born. That's where the push becomes worship. And there will be moments where it feels like your past is louder than your promise, where the shame tries to mute your hope. But let me tell you something. Your past does not disqualify you. It prepares you. It positions you. There's nothing you've walked through that God won't use. Nothing wasted. Nothing overlooked. Nothing forgotten. Every scar is evidence that you survived what was meant to break you. Every scar is a testimony waiting to be told. So when the enemy whispers that you're not enough, when he tells you that you'll never make it out, I want you to rise up with holy defiance and say, watch me push through. Push through the insecurity, push through the doubt, push through the loneliness, push through the delay, push through the disappointment, because what's on the other side is too precious to let go of now. I know it doesn't feel fair. I know it feels like others are running while you're crawling, but your race is not their race. Your route is not their route. And just because it's hard doesn't mean it's not holy. Some roads are rough because they're sacred. Some burdens feel heavy because they carry legacy. You weren't built for ordinary. You were built for breakthrough. And breakthrough doesn't start when it's easy. Breakthrough begins when you decide that tired isn't the end, that broken doesn't mean buried, that delayed is not denied. You've got a yes in your spirit that hell can't cancel. You've got a light in your soul that darkness can't extinguish, and it may flicker, it may waver, but it won't go out, because you were chosen for such a time as this. You don't need all the answers. You don't have to have it all figured out. All you need is the next step. And sometimes the next step looks like crawling. Sometimes the next step looks like tears. But movement is still movement. And every step you take, heaven celebrates. Every time you get back up, angels applaud. Because your push is shaking the very gates of hell. Let them talk. Let them doubt. Let them question. But don't you dare quit. You owe it to the little girl inside you who dreamed before the world told her what she couldn't do. You owe it to the version of you who didn't know if she'd survive the pain, but she did. You owe it to the future you who is waiting on the other side of your obedience. It's not just about now, it's about legacy. There are people connected to your yes. People whose lives will be transformed because you didn't give up, because you chose to keep going. And I know it's heavy. I know it's uncomfortable, but that's the labor of destiny. That's the push of purpose. And when it gets hard, when it feels like your knees are buckling beneath the weight, I want you to remember, diamonds are made in pressure. Warriors are formed in warfare, and queens are crowned after they've survived the crushing. You don't need to fake strong. You don't need to pretend you're not struggling. But what you do need to do is decide that you won't let the pain win. Decide that your story isn't over. Decide that you are still called, still chosen, still anointed, even when life feels like chaos. Your power doesn't come from perfection. It comes from your persistence, from your decision to show up with trembling hands and still say, "Yes, Lord." Pressure is preparation, not punishment. That truth is easy to say when life is peaceful, but it becomes hard to grasp when the weight of your situation feels unbearable. It's in those moments when you're crying out to God, asking, "Why me? Why this? Why now?" that this truth is tested. But let me remind you, the very thing you're calling pressure might be the exact tool God is using to prepare you for what you've been praying for. We often want the promise without the process, the elevation without the stretching. But God, in His wisdom, knows that blessing you too soon could break you. So He applies pressure not to harm you, not to shame you, but to develop in you the strength, character, and capacity needed to carry the next level. It's not punishment. It's divine shaping. Think about how diamonds are made. They're not formed in comfort. They don't shine because they were treated gently. Diamonds are made under intense heat and extreme pressure, and yet when the process is complete, they're unbreakable, brilliant, and valuable. That's what God is doing in you. The pressure you're under isn't a sign of abandonment. It's a signal of transformation. You see, we want to be ready for the stage, the influence, the platform, but there are parts of us that still need refining. There are insecurities, fears, traumas, and habits that can't go with us into the next season, and rather than exposing us publicly, God allows pressure to do the work privately because He loves us too much to let us arrive unprepared. He loves us too much to bless us prematurely. The pressure teaches you how to pray when no one else understands. It teaches you how to stand when everything in you wants to sit down and hide. It teaches you how to trust God, not just when things are going well, but when everything feels like it's falling apart. That's where real faith is forged, in the fire of pressure. There are lessons you can only learn under weight: patience, endurance, discernment. These aren't things you develop when life is easy. They're formed when you feel like giving up but choose to stay, when you're misunderstood but keep showing love, when the breakthrough is delayed but you stay obedient. That's preparation. That's maturity. That's becoming who you were always meant to be. And let's be honest, if everything came easy, we start thinking it was us. We confuse God's grace with our own strength, but pressure humbles us. It strips away pride. It reminds us we are not self-made. We are God-made. It makes us lean into Him, depend on Him, and ultimately walk in a level of authority that doesn't come from ease. It comes from endurance. Don't let the enemy convince you that pressure means failure. Don't misinterpret the tension as God's absence. Sometimes the silence is strategic. Sometimes the closed door is protection. Sometimes the delay is development. God is preparing you for more than you ask for, but He's making sure you can handle it. So if it feels like you're being crushed, don't curse the process, because the same pressure that feels like it's breaking you is actually building you. You are not being punished. You are being positioned. You are being prepared. And when the time is right, you will emerge not only stronger, but wiser, more grounded, more refined. The pressure was never about what was happening around you. It was always about what God was building within you. Your past does not disqualify your purpose. It doesn't matter how messy, how complicated, how painful, or how shameful your past may look. God can still use it. We often carry the weight of who we were, thinking it cancels out who we are becoming. But what you walked through wasn't meant to bury you. It was meant to break ground for what God would build through you. The enemy wants you to believe that your mistakes, your failures, your detours have rendered you unusable. He whispers that you're too broken, too far gone, too stained to be chosen. But that's a lie, because grace doesn't wait for perfection. Grace walks right into the mess, into the scandal, into the secret places you try to hide, and says, you are still mine and I still have plans for you. See, people may try to define you by your past, but God never does. He sees the whole picture, your pain and your potential, your fall and your future. He doesn't flinch at your brokenness. In fact, he often calls the most flawed people to carry the most powerful purposes. Why? Because when God redeems a life, he makes sure the world knows it wasn't done by human hands. He gets the glory from your comeback. He gets the glory from your transformation. There's nothing you've done that surprises God. He factored in every poor decision, every wrong turn, every moment of weakness, and he still called you, still anointed you, still marked you for something greater. That's the beauty of his love. It's not performance-based. It's not contingent on your record. It's rooted in his nature, and his nature is to redeem, restore, and repurpose. Sometimes we disqualify ourselves because we're still stuck in who we were. We replay the pain, the regret, the shame, and it becomes a soundtrack that keeps us from stepping into destiny. But the moment you bring your past to God and allow him to heal it, you take the first step in rewriting the narrative. You give him the pen and say, Lord, write something new with this, and he does. You see, the very thing you thought disqualified you may actually be the platform God uses to reach others. Your testimony is not something to hide, it's something to steward. Someone needs to hear what you've survived. Someone needs to see that God still moves in messy stories, that healing is still possible, that freedom is still real. When God uses you in spite of your past, it destroys shame's grip. Shame wants you silent, it wants you stuck, but purpose breaks chains. Purpose speaks boldly and walks freely, and that's what God is calling you to do, not just to survive what you've been through, but to speak from it, to stand in it, and to walk others out of what you once thought would kill you. Let's stop treating our history like a prison. It's not your identity. It's a chapter, not the whole story. Yes, you may have made some wrong choices. Yes, you may carry scars, but God specializes in turning ashes into beauty. He takes what was meant for evil and uses it for good. That's not just a nice verse. That's your reality when you give your past over to him. You're not behind. You're not disqualified. You're right on time for the purpose God ordained for you. Every moment, even the painful ones, has been woven into a divine plan. Your story is not too messy for God. In fact, it's the mess that often reveals the miracle. So lift your head. Walk boldly. Your past is a testimony, not a limitation. God doesn't call the qualified. He qualifies the called. And he's calling you. Breakthrough begins when you decide not to quit. It doesn't start when everything feels right. It doesn't wait until you have all the answers, all the resources, all the support. It starts the moment you make up your mind that quitting is no longer an option. That decision made in the quiet of your spirit in the middle of your storm is what shifts everything. There's something powerful about refusing to give up, even when giving up would be the easiest thing to do. When you're tired, when you're discouraged, when nothing around you looks like the promise God gave you. When prayers go unanswered and the silence is loud, that's when your decision carries the most weight. Because that's not just persistence, that's spiritual warfare. That's faith. The truth is, the enemy doesn't have to destroy you. He just has to convince you to stop moving. If he can drain your hope, if he can weaken your determination, if he can make you question whether it's even worth it anymore, he's done his job. But every time you rise up and say, I may not see it yet, but I'm not letting go, you take back ground, you push forward, you stir heaven and frustrate hell. You see, your breakthrough is often closer than it looks, but breakthrough doesn't come to the one who has it all figured out. It comes to the one who refuses to sit in defeat, the one who shows up broken but still willing, the one who may be limping but says, I'm still moving. Sometimes the most powerful declaration you can make is simply, I'm still here. Every hero of faith had a moment when quitting felt logical. Moses got overwhelmed. Elijah sat under a tree and asked God to take his life. Even Jesus in the garden cried out in agony. But what did they all do? They got back up. They kept walking, and because they didn't quit, we now call them faithful. Their stories inspire us not because they were perfect, but because they endured. The same is true for you. Your endurance is your strength. Your ability to keep going in the face of pressure, opposition, and delay is what shapes your breakthrough. And breakthrough isn't just about external circumstances shifting. Sometimes it starts on the inside when your mindset changes, when your spirit catches fire again, when your heart decides to believe even when it's been broken. Don't wait for everything around you to change before you choose to stand up. Stand first. Speak life into your situation. Stir up your faith even when your feelings don't line up. That kind of decision doesn't just impact you, it breaks generational chains. It shifts the atmosphere in your home. It silences lies that have echoed through your bloodline for too long. Your decision not to quit is more powerful than you realize. You don't need everything to make sense. You just need to know that God is still with you, that he hasn't changed his mind about your calling, that your yes still matters, because when you keep walking step by step, day by day, heaven moves, doors open, favor finds you, healing flows, not always in ways you expect, but always in ways that grow you. So today, make the decision, not tomorrow, not when you feel stronger, right here, right now, in the middle of your questions and chaos. Decide that you will not give up, that you will give into your gifts and your right, and decide that you will not, that your purpose is too precious, that your calling is too important, that your story isn't over. You may bend, but you won't break. You may cry, but you won't collapse, because deep down, you've already chosen. You're not going to quit, and that decision changes everything. Movement, even messy, still honors the mission. Too often we think we have to wait until everything is perfectly in place before we act. Wait until the pain is gone, until we feel strong, until we're sure we won't. But the truth is, purpose doesn't require perfection. It requires obedience. And sometimes obedience looks like moving while you're still bleeding, still doubting, still unsure. God never asked for flawless execution. He asked for faith. And faith isn't always neat. Sometimes it's shaky hands and trembling voices. Sometimes it's tears running down your face while you still whisper, yes, Lord. Sometimes it's taking the next step even when your heart is heavy and your vision is blurred. That's the kind of movement that moves heaven. Raw, real, vulnerable. The idea that you have to have it all together before you start is a lie that keeps too many people stuck, waiting, paralyzed, thinking they're not ready. But sometimes the oil flows in the middle of the movement. Sometimes clarity comes as you go. God doesn't always give you the full picture because he wants to see if you'll trust him with just the next step. It doesn't have to look pretty to be powerful. It doesn't have to be loud to be effective. God honors movement born out of faith. He honors the crawl. He honors the fight to get out of bed. He honors the decision to try again after failing. He honors the way you showed up to that room, to that calling, to that conversation, even though fear tried to tell you to stay home. That's what honoring the mission looks like. We look at other people's progress and think their journey was polished, seamless, and smooth, but you don't see the nights they cried, the times they almost quit, the way they had to talk themselves into staying the course. Everybody who's ever walked in purpose had a moment where it felt messy, where it felt like, God, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm doing it for you. That kind of movement is sacred. It's not about the outcome, it's about the surrender. It's about saying, God, this doesn't feel perfect, but I trust that your hand is on it anyway. And he does what only he can do. He breathes on your little and makes it much. He takes your stumble and turns it into a step. He uses your mess as the backdrop for his glory. Sometimes the breakthrough isn't in the big leap. It's in the small daily choices to keep moving, to keep healing, to keep forgiving, to keep building, even if it's slow, even if it's quiet, even if no one else claps for it. That's the kind of movement that builds something real, something rooted. Don't underestimate the power of showing up in your weakness. That's where God's strength shines the most. Paul said it best, his power is made perfect in weakness. So if you feel weak, messy, scattered, that might be the exact place where purpose begins to rise. Because your willingness to move in that space tells God, I'm not waiting to be perfect, I'm available now. And that availability is where things start to shift. Doors open, opportunities align, not because you forced them, but because you honored the mission with your movement. And maybe it didn't go the way you planned, maybe it didn't look the way you imagined, but it was real, it was faith. And that's more than enough for God to use. So don't wait until you feel worthy. Don't pause your purpose until everything is lined up perfectly. Move with what you have. Move with what you know, even if it's messy, even if you're scared, even if all you have is one shaky step at a time. Take it, because God honors the move. There's legacy on the other side of your push. You're not just pushing for yourself. You're not just fighting to survive. You're contending for something that will outlive you. Every decision you make to press forward, every moment you choose faith over fear, every time you show up when it would have been easier to quit, you're laying the foundation for something bigger than you. See, legacy isn't just about what you leave behind when you're gone. It's what you build while you're still here. It's what you impart through your perseverance, your character, your obedience. Someone is watching you push. A child, a friend, a stranger, someone who needs to know that endurance is possible, that wholeness is available, that healing can come after heartbreak. Your life is evidence in progress, and your push is preaching even when your mouth is silent. We don't always see the fruit of what we're pushing for right away. Sometimes you're sowing in tears, wondering if the harvest will ever come. But what if the seeds you're planting now are meant to bless generations you'll never meet? What if your yes to God is breaking cycles that have existed in your bloodline for years? What if the push you're in today is opening doors your children will walk through with ease? That's legacy. It's not glamour, it's grit. It's the choice to heal so your children don't inherit your trauma. It's the decision to be faithful so that someone else can have a blueprint for what faith really looks like. Legacy is created when you refuse to let pain have the final word, when you refuse to let fear silence your purpose. You are becoming someone else's inspiration right now, not after you've figured it all out, not once you've crossed the finish line, but in the middle of your journey. Your push is paving the way for someone who's still finding their footing. Your persistence is proof that God still carries his people through. Your fight is not in vain. There are mantles being passed down through obedience. There are dreams being protected through your discipline. There are destinies being unlocked because you chose not to settle. What if your breakthrough becomes someone else's starting point? What if your testimony becomes the catalyst for someone else's transformation? That's the kind of weight your push carries. And no, it's not easy. Legacy never is. It costs something. It stretches you. It humbles you. But it also refines you and reveals you. It reveals the strength you didn't know you had. It reveals the power of God working through your weakness. It reveals the generational impact of a single decision to keep going. You might not see the full picture yet. You might feel like what you're doing doesn't matter. But heaven is keeping record. God is weaving your obedience into something eternal. And while the world might overlook your fight, God sees every step, every tear, every moment you pushed when no one was watching. One day, someone will stand on the ground you're breaking now. Someone will live in the freedom you fought for. Someone will dream because you refuse to give up on yours. That's legacy, not perfection, not applause, but purpose lived out loud, even in private, even in pain. So push not just for the moment, but for the movement. Push because what you carry has weight. Push because generations are attached to your perseverance. Push because on the other side of this stretch is a story that will echo far beyond your lifetime. Legacy lives in your push, and you're building something eternal every time you decide to move forward. Pain births power. It's not a cliche, it's a spiritual truth. The very thing you thought would break you, the situation that nearly took you out, the betrayal, the heartbreak, the failure, God can take all of it and pull power from the places you were once most wounded. That's what He does. He transforms. He doesn't just patch things up, He makes them new. And in that renewal, there's a strength that can only come through surviving the struggle. We don't ask for pain, we welcome it, but somehow, after we've walked through the fire and didn't burn, we come out different, sharper, deeper, stronger, not because we figured it all out, but because we discovered that even in the dark, God was still God. Even in the silence, He was still speaking. Even in the ache, He was still present. And now you carry something that can't be taught in a classroom or copied from a book. You carry power that was born in your pressing. There is a depth to people who've suffered and stayed, who've endured the storm and came out with wisdom, not bitterness, who let the crushing drive them closer to God instead of away. That depth is the foundation of power, not just to endure, but to influence, to lead, to speak life into others who are still in the valley you walked out of. That's not something you perform, that's something you become. Pain births power because it shatters your pride. It removes the illusion that you can do it all alone. It takes you to the end of yourself and forces you to reach for something higher, deeper, more eternal. And when you reach, when you find God in that low place, something shifts. You don't just survive, you are resurrected. You rise but different. You rise but with clarity. You rise but with a new mantle, a new level of authority. It's not about pretending the pain didn't happen. It's about realizing the pain had purpose. That what the enemy meant for evil, God really can use for good. And sometimes that good isn't just about what happens to you, it's about what happens through you. Your story, your scars, your survival, they become tools in the hands of a mighty God. They become keys to unlock healing for others. They become fuel for a fire that won't burn out. Don't be ashamed of what hurt you. Don't hide the seasons that nearly crushed you, because on the other side of that pain is a version of you that knows how to fight, how to worship through weeping, how to declare victory when all you see is loss. That's where your real power is, not in the pretending, but in the pressing, in the places you broke and let God put you back together again. And once you tap into that, you walk different. You speak different. You carry a weight that others can feel. Not because you're loud, but because you're rooted. You've been through the storm and you didn't drown. You know what it's like to cry out and still show up. That's not weakness. That's strength. That's power. So if you're in pain right now, don't believe the lie that it's the end. Don't assume God has left you. He's in the middle of the mess, shaping you, stretching you, growing something inside of you that is too powerful to be born in comfort. Power is rising even now. It may not look like it, but something holy is happening. Something heavy is being lifted, and when it's done, you won't just be healed, you'll be empowered, because pain births power. And you are proof you've come too far to turn back now. Everything you've endured, every tear you've cried, every time you pushed when it would have been easier to give up, it all mattered. It was never wasted. What looked like delay was development. What felt like breaking was actually birthing. You are being shaped by every moment you thought would destroy you. And what's forming in you is greater than what came against you. You don't need to have it all together. You just need to keep moving, keep pressing, keep showing up, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard, because your push is not just for you. It's generational, it's prophetic, it's powerful, and God is using it to build something eternal. Every mess you thought disqualified you has actually qualified you to speak with authority, to walk in compassion, to lead with authenticity. You are not behind. You are right on time. Don't let fear make you forfeit the future that's already been spoken over your life. Don't let shame keep you silent when your voice carries freedom. You were made for this. You were called for this. The journey is messy. The process is painful. But the purpose is still sure, and your decision to push through, day by day, breath by breath, is shaking things in the spirit. It's shifting atmosphere. It's setting the stage for glory. You're not pushing alone. Heaven is backing you. Grace is carrying you. And glory is waiting on the other side. So don't stop, don't settle, don't shrink. Push through. This push is birthing something new. This push is stretching your capacity. This push is shifting atmospheres. You